Hello there, everyone. I'm Gaylen Morse, and welcome to Journey to Recovery. We appreciate you listening. Our podcast today is called Specific Strategies to Rebuild Trust. Chemical dependency problems often come with hurt, betrayal, and heartache and tear at the very fabric of a relationship. In today's episode, we'll discuss specific strategies to acknowledge mistakes, begin the reconciliation process, and rebuild a relationship with mutual respect and trust. Our program host is Dr. Hal Baumchen, a licensed clinical psychologist and licensed alcohol and drug counselor. He's an author, speaker, and clinician with over 30 years of counseling experience. I'm here today with Tim Bode, Director of Operations at Northland Counseling Services, and with Dr. Hal Baumchen, our host at Journey to Recovery. Hello, guys.
Hello, Gaylen. Hello, Dr. Hal.
Hey, Tim. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Good.
So today we're continuing a discussion about rebuilding trust.
It's an important concept, I think, because if you use alcohol and drugs, unfortunately, it seems like 100% of the time you end up minimizing, denying, lying to somebody about what you're doing, how much you're doing, how often you're doing, and the consequences that go along with it. So rebuilding trust becomes an important issue.
Mm-hmm. Are people pretty trustworthy in your opinion?
Yes. I'm struggling here, Gaylen, because of what I just said. When you end up with an addiction, you know, I hate to say it like this, but in the middle of the addiction, most people are not trustworthy. Yeah. So part of recovery is to rebuild trust. You've got to quit drinking, but then you've got to rebuild your ability to be honest with yourself and with other people.
Mm-hmm. So there are a couple of quotes that I know you like, Dr. Hal, about trust. And
the first one is nearly everyone will lie to you given the right circumstances. And then the other one that I like is when in doubt, tell the truth. Now that first one, given the right circumstances, almost everyone will lie to you, was Bill Clinton, a politician telling us that, you know, in the right circumstances, everybody lies. And then the second one, when possible, when in doubt, tell the truth. That one was Mark Twain. So now we have a fiction writer telling us to tell the truth, and we have a politician telling us everybody lies. So yeah, very fascinating. So telling the truth and being honest is an important concept in all of life, including politics. Yeah. You know, in addition to appreciating the truth, like we mentioned last time on the podcast, most people also want approval. And so when those two concepts come in contest, honesty or approval, they often sacrifice honesty and truth in order to try to retain approval. When I had some folks come into the counseling center and they told me that their son had a problem with lying, and I wanted to know a little bit more about the family system, but I also speculated that I bet this kid's having trouble with approval, and he's trying to retain his folks' approval. So I wanted to know, like, are you tough on him when he does something wrong? And, you know, that turned out to be, yeah, I guess we're kind of hard on him when he does something wrong. So he didn't want their disapproval. He wanted to keep their approval, so he would do something wrong and then lie about it. And then they got really upset that he was lying. But it's a family systems problem, so we had to strategize about how to give him some approval for who he was as a person, some character traits, stuff.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like he was afraid of getting caught and being yelled at by his parents.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely, right.
How would you address that?
Again, we got to find a way to attend to him, approve of him, and affirm him for positive attributes and characteristics, not just about behavior. And then we also want to deliver consequences that are linked to what he does wrong, and maybe up the ante a little bit when he lies about it. So that there's a consequence for doing the wrong thing, and then there's a consequence when he lies about the wrong thing that he did also. So,
yes.
So you know that when your mom told you years ago, Tim, you know, like, it doesn't matter what you do as long as you tell me the truth. She's lying to you, kid. It matters deeply what you do, but it matters even more that you're lying about it.
Let's get into talking about some specific strategies about rebuilding trust.
Get us started here.
Okay, so the first one on our list is to commit yourself to restoration.
So I'm trying to change my life in terms of the addiction and then repair the damage that I've done. So in a relationship where the two people are struggling together, both of them, it seems to me, should commit themselves to the restoration of the relationship. In rebuilding that mutual working relationship, both people have to be at least somewhat interested in restoring it.
Mm-hmm.
How about you must be consistent with your actions?
Trust is built when the behavior is predictable and your words and actions are reliable and dependable or consistent. Mm-hmm. So absolutely, you have to be consistent with your actions.
So we have 10 things we're going to go through on our list. The second one is to admit your wrongdoing.
Restoration of trust requires just being able to admit that what you did was wrong. It was me, I did it, I was wrong, I'm sorry, please forgive me. But the inability to say I have any faults or I do anything wrong, that's going to keep anybody from rebuilding trust. It's going to damage the relationship further. So you have to start with admitting that you did something wrong.
Mm-hmm. So you basically admit what you did was wrong, it was harmful, and you take responsibility for your own actions.
Yeah. Don't blame somebody else for your mistakes. I wouldn't have to yell at you if you weren't so doggone stupid. I don't have an anger problem. You have a stupidity problem. You get that look that we're going to be good here. No, you don't want to come across that way. You really want to be careful about that. Own your own stuff. Don't blame somebody else for your actions or your character defects.
You know, this whole thought about being consistently honest and direct and upfront, it sounds hard to do. It sounds difficult.
Right, so expect a bumpy ride. You can't expect somebody to perfectly deal with your imperfections. So when you start restoring it, maybe you're going to get misunderstood or rejected or accused, made fun of, blamed. So all of those things could come up and like, hey, I don't deserve any of that. Well, it's tough to expect them to perfectly treat your imperfections.
Mm-hmm. Number 3 is forgive the one who has offended you.
We talked a little bit about this on our last podcast, so there's a difference between forgiveness and trust. Both of them are important here. If you damage trust, you can't make somebody forgive you. That's on that other person's side. They choose to forgive you. They decide to forgive you. And then rebuilding trust, that's on your side. If you damage trust, you got to rebuild it. And rebuilding trust means demonstrating over time that you're trustworthy again. So if you're struggling with how do I restore trust, how do I reconcile this relationship, keep both of those things in mind. You have to be willing to forgive the person who's hurt you, and you have to change your behavior and demonstrate yourself to be trustworthy over time.
Mm-hmm. Number 4 is to establish accountability.
So seek somebody out that understands what you did, and maybe you're honest with them about it. So if you've been lying to your spouse, maybe find somebody else who will ask you, how are you doing in your relationship? Are you honest with your wife? Maybe choose somebody else as an accountability partner, like a sponsor or a group that you go to or your pastor or something, but not just the person that you injured. Mm-hmm. Find somebody else that will hold you accountable.
Number 5 is talk through new difficulties.
Right. So when you're rebuilding the relationship, it maybe has to do with a few things in the past where you damaged trust. And then sure enough, along the way, while you're rebuilding, you goof up again. And you want to talk through those new problems as they arise. Don't just garbage bag them, dump them out on somebody later on. Talk through new difficulties in the relationship, both the things that you did and also that come up in other areas of the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Always keep your word.
Yeah, always keep your word. If you're not able to and you fail at keeping your word, then admit it quickly and be sincere about it. And then try to, get through that the best you can through forgiveness and rebuilding trust again. So be honest, and when you're not honest, admit to it.
Number 6 is to focus on improvement.
Right. Hard to be perfect, as we all know. So it's,
Well, at least I know that. Not sure about you guys.
yeah, I know that too. So you want to look for growth or change in the relationship. Now, you have to be kind of careful here. So when you say to the little girl, I'm going to give you 3 strikes and then I'm going to give you a consequence, what you mean is some little minor problem. You can't push your cousin down the stairway and say strike 1, you know. Same thing here. We're looking for improvements, but, notice when there's some change, like, hey, you made an announcement where you were going to be, and then you did that, you followed through, you said what you were going to do, and then you did it. And so you kind of notice that, and you maybe, you do your little high five for improvement rather than just hunting for mistakes. Look for improvements, not faults.
Mm-hmm. The 7th strategy is to be encouraging.
Again, back to noticing when somebody did something right and look for improvement. You can also affirm and encourage the one who's trying to rebuild a damaged relationship. Commit yourself to restoration and reconciliation and communicate the efforts that are made without finding fault or criticizing and complaining.
Strategy number 8 is to mind your attitudes and your behavior.
Trust is reestablished and built based on how you treat others in public and how you conduct yourself in private. Keep your word and then admit when you don't. One of the nice things about my relationship with my wife is sometimes when I do some public speaking around the world and other places that I've been, Jane, my wife, will accompany me when she can. And sometimes people are asking me questions after a seminar and other people can't get to me. And so they go to Jane, and this is funny to me, but they expect her to know what I know and answer a question because they couldn't get to me. I find that funny. But sometimes they'll ask her, what is he really like? And she says, he's the same goofball at home that you see up there on the stage. He's pretty consistent, which is actually a compliment, that you should be the same in public as you are in private, be the same in private as you are in public. What are you trying to hide? I'm not hiding. You can look in my wallet, check my phone. I'm not going any place I shouldn't go. I'm not being with somebody I shouldn't be with, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, speaking of asking questions, number 9 is don't interrogate.
So don't ask for details about past crimes or offenses. It seems like people have a false premise. If I just knew this one thing about what you did and where you were and who you were with, if I just knew this one thing, my pain would go away. So hunt for that information, interrogate, challenge, accuse, fight, lots of conflict, and then finally they get that piece of information. But the premise was off. My pain will go away if I just knew that piece of information. Now I know that piece of information. Did your pain go down? Not one bit. Didn't help at all. In fact, it opened up 2 more questions and a lot more pain. So that whole thing about interrogating, in my opinion, you're entitled to a few things that are generalities about the crimes committed, but hunting for more information is just going to damage the relationship further. And this is such a big deal, Gaylen, where people want to do this. And it's so difficult, and we're going to come to this, but get some help. Get some help because it's so challenging.
Yep, and that's number 10. Seek help if you need it.
And you're gonna need it, aren't you? Yeah. Oh man, this is so hard. People come in, they're just beat up and torn apart, and yet they want to restore the relationship. So see if you can get some counseling or get some help or confide in somebody who can help you. Be supportive of what you're going through and help you navigate the pitfalls that go along with rebuilding trust.
Isn't it true that some people deceive, lie, steal, minimize, deny problems? They do it for so long that it kind of becomes their native language.
Isn't that something? And you can't almost tell what's true anymore, and you've lied so often. I knew someone in the past who lied, and I couldn't find any reason. There's no reason that she needed to do that, and it was almost like she was so used to it that she would just do it. No reason. And it became, it felt like anyway, it became her native language. So used to doing it. So a third party can help you talk through things, somebody who can help you work through difficult issues without overreacting or counterattacking.
So let's go through several points to remember about rebuilding trust.
What I did there, Tim, we've got a list in front of us. I tried to just come up with a couple of things that, if you remembered a few things from today's podcast or you wanted a little bit of help, I tried to write a few pointers down.
Yeah. So one of them is, the first one is, say what you're going to do and then do it.
Right. So we've talked about this a couple times on the podcast already, but just being consistent with your actions. And so I'm going to say what I'm going to do. And I think saying it out loud gives you some built-in accountability. So say what you're going to do. That part is actually important. And then certainly follow through consistently.
How about don't minimize your faults or failings?
Yeah, try to own them. It was me. I did it. I was wrong. So see if you can come to terms with your own faults, defects, and failings and admit them up front. If you falter, go ahead, say that you did, and then get up again.
Right. So honestly admit a return of symptoms or a relapse.
Right. It's just tough when you're dealing with a substance use disorder because your primary goal in your own mind is to get your life back and get clean and sober. And now you've faltered a little bit or slipped back. It's tough to admit to. It's the very most important thing. And maybe you're being judged on that thing too. So it's hard to admit it. But I think the best strategy here is to talk about it and admit to it. And I've had clients who have had a slip over the weekend, and on Monday they're talking about it.
So related to that, I think, is be honest about substance abuse temptations that you face.
Right, even if you didn't slip. Like, man, I've got these huge cravings, these temptations. I was dreaming about it or thinking about it. And just saying that out loud, I think, often ruins the power of it. It decreases the power of that temptation. So go ahead, talk about that.
How about, I think this is a good one, be on time and don't lie
Gaylen.
when you're not. Well, I guess that was last week, wasn't it?
Thanks for bringing that up. Yeah. Right. So we admitted right away that we were going to be late, and we didn't deny it, and we didn't blame anybody else for it. We took full responsibility for it. So if you're going to be late, or any other scheduled kind of thing that, when something was due and you didn't get to it, try to own that without blame shifting.
Also, be transparent about where you were and who you were with.
Right. Again, it starts to build trust in the relationship. And if you slip and you start lying about where you were, I said I was going to go to Home Depot, but I stopped at the bar. Man, you should talk about that. That's just going to wreck the relationship and wreck your recovery.
So we're talking through some important points about rebuilding trust. The next one is, when accused, don't counterattack. That's hard.
A good offense is better than a good defense. I don't know. So, a lot of people do that. Hey, you were late. Yeah, well, you were late 10 other times before. So that isn't an explanation. That isn't talking through a problem. That's a counterattack. Many people do that. We don't want you to do that. I don't think that rebuilds trust. I think that damages relationship. We want you to own your own stuff without trying to deflect it back onto somebody else's problems.
Don't brag or exaggerate your accomplishments or successes.
Why not? Well, it seems like that's a little bit of a white lie or a shaded lie in a more positive direction, but it kind of makes you untrustworthy. You didn't get 10 free throws in a row. You got 4, and then you missed 2, and then you got 6. Still something. Why did you have to say I got 10 in a row? It makes you untrustworthy to brag like that.
Don't make excuses for poor behavior.
This field is filled with good intentions, excuses, exceptions, and so it comes up a lot to do something wrong, but then have a built-in excuse why it was that way. It was traffic, it was weather, it was other people, it was situation, circumstances, it was Hillary Clinton. It was something or somebody that caused me to have a problem. It wasn't me. So again, when you're rebuilding trust, you got to own your own stuff.
Be upfront and honest with your finances and spending.
We talked before we turned the mics on about a client who was using a lot of money on a video game. And so not only was he using a lot of money on a video game, and he knew that he had gotten into trouble about that, but he also was dishonest about it. So, yeah, you want to be upfront about how you're spending your money. And maybe when you have to be upfront about how you're spending your money, you'll be more careful with your money too.
Mm-hmm. And the last one on our list is to give information before it's requested.
Kind of an odd one, isn't it? Why would you say that? Instead of having somebody interrogate you or hunting you down for information or accusing you, if you were late, why don't you just say I was late and then maybe give your reason for being late? Whether it was a good reason or bad reason, why don't you give your reason instead of making somebody ask you about it?
Or call before you're late.
Yes. Right.
I'll edit that out.
Stay honest with yourself. Stay honest with other people. And emotional health and recovery from substance abuse is really built on personal and relational integrity and transparency. So examine yourself honestly and then reveal yourself accurately.
So trust is a foundational piece, as we've been talking about, of any long-lasting, intimate relationship.
And doesn't it just seem like it's well worth the fight? It's well worth the time and trouble it takes to develop, because you just don't have much of a relationship if you can't trust somebody, especially in an intimate relationship. You really need that foundational trust piece. Start by being intentional and making commitments and plans that require follow-through and perseverance and diligence. And then strong, lasting, rewarding relationships are built, not discovered.
Well, thanks for listening to today's podcast entitled Rebuilding Trust. You can download other materials that help you develop skills to identify emotional problems, reduce symptoms, and prevent relapse at journeytorecovery.com. We've been visiting with Dr. Hal Baumchen, a licensed clinical psychologist and licensed alcohol and drug counselor. I'm Gaylen Morse. Thanks for listening to today's program. See you next time on Journey to Recovery. Remember, recovery is a journey. Enjoy the ride.